one of PNG's most vocal political figures. But few know about your journey before politics. You came from the private sector with experience in the mining industry, and that background gives you a very rare insight into what real delivery and accountability looks like. Can you share a bit about who you are, what brought you into politics, and how your professional experience has shaped your leadership style?
Well, it's quite simple, really. I, I guess even as a student in university, I always wanted change, and I didn't like it when things weren't working to a standard that I felt we deserved. You know what I mean, as a people. So I think, my first major protest as a student, one of the protests I led was against Serabi Namaliu when he was PM. And look, we later became really good friends, and he's someone I admire. But, that was around the time when the first ugly head of corruption began to creep in. So, further afield, when I started working for Oktedi Mining Limited, even though I ended up in middle management, I was a student activist, union activist, pushing for better conditions for Papua New Guinean workers. So, I've always had in me this desire for, I guess, social justice, social equity, giving everyone a fair go. And I think my longest employment, well, now in another year, it'll be my longest employment being a member of parliament. I was at Oktedi, and under being trained by BHP, getting cultured with all of the BHP values, and that's just filtered through to sort of things like maximizing your resources, getting better value, being honest and transparent. All these came from BHP. I mean, BHP, what they call a global leadership development program. And I was very fortunate to be one of those Papua New Guineans. I think there were about 20 of us that were identified and put through the program. I ended up working in mining, all kinds of mining operations all over the world, and that gave me the grounding and sort of developed my views as to how things should work, and I've just brought that into politics. And the motivation for going into politics was that I was still at Oktedi in 1993. My grandfather died. And even though I was born in Wewak and spent maybe a couple of my early years in my village, due to the economic hardship at the time, my mom moved myself and my sister to MADANG. So I grew up in the settlements of MADANG.
Wow.
And yeah, so I hardly went back home to the village, but I was always really close to my grandfather. My grandfather originally adopted me as his son when I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old. So I was always very close to him. And when he passed away, I made it a point to go home to bury him. I arrived about 2 days after he was buried because the roads were so bad. When I finally got to the village and sort of met my cousins and all the other relatives and met their kids, and I suddenly realized the very privileged life I had as someone working in the mining sector. I mean, obviously, the best paid workers in this country are in the mining sector. And I just felt guilty looking at how my relatives were living in the village with no money. And one of the other peculiar things was that my closest cousin, he's passed away since, and guess what? He died from diabetes of all things.
Oh,
He was
wow.
quite yeah,
Sorry.
that's the improved lifestyle. It's actually killing a lot of my relatives now. But at the time, I said to him, I was like, Henry, why are you guys doing all these holdups on the highway? Because my village was very, very popular for holdups, armed holdups, and stealing. It was quite embarrassing. With my background, coming home to find out that my people are essential criminals. And he said something that essentially changed my entire outlook on life. He said, we have a lot of food, but when your nieces and nephews want soft drinks or they want a bicycle or twisties, he says, I don't have any cash to buy that stuff for my kids. Yeah. So the only way I can make money is, to hold up the trucks running on the highway and get money that way. So that had a profound effect on me. I thought, I'm educated enough to help these people. So that's when I started looking at cash crops and things like that. And, I sacrificed all my breaks from the mine. So every time I had a holiday, I'd fly to home. And I sort of broke up my holidays around my work, and I'd spend about a week at home and started developing cash crops. Coming out of school, I was the top agriculture student in my class, even though I
Not
didn't
surprised.
take it up. I was also the top economic student in my class, even though I didn't take that
Wow.
up. Um,
Wow.
I think number one in the
Very
country or
impressive,
something at the
Governor.
time. But anyway, I was ducks of school. Well, coming from the environment I came from, you had to work hard to sort of get ahead of everybody else, and I think that's what I did naturally. And so I thought, I might as well use all these things that I know to come back and help my people. And the internet was just beginning to open up in Papua New Guinea around that time. So I had access to the internet. I was one of few Papua New Guineans with access, thanks to Octeri Mining Limited. So I spent a lot of time doing research on the internet, even though it was really slow. So I learned a lot, and I began to apply that in the village. And so by about 1999, I quit my job after 8 years. Went home and started training people in cash cropping, agriculture, vanilla, cocoa, all these things, just trying to help. So I went from village to village, and I turned it into a business. Yeah.
Wow.